What's going on, guys? So tonight I'm gonna be trying to fish with glide baits. Here, Jigging wraps, Johnny darters, moonshine shiver minnows, Acme hyper rattles. Those are all your glide baits. Jigging wraps is kind of where it's all started. It's actually kind of where I cut my teeth with walleye fishing, probably about 10 years ago. As you can see, I've got a lot of them. I've got a mess. So the way I started fishing jigging wraps was pretty much just straight up and down under the boat. Didn't take too long to figure out that these things work really well casting. Nice walleye. So you can see where that fish is hooked. A lot of times these fish will actually just cram it to the bottom. I don't know if they're trying to hit it and just go over top of it, or if they actually try and push this thing right down into the sand and wound it, slow it down. But you'll hook a lot of fish right underneath their head and in their chest like that. We've seen them ice fishing on the camera swing at these baits 3 or 4 times before they even hit it, so they're not that accurate. But I'll work the jigging wrap and all glide baits a bunch of different ways depending on the day. I'll try 5 or 6 different cadences. I'll do the single pop when it's a little bit colder. In the summertime, usually I'm popping it 2 or 3 times. I let it fall on slack line. Not too slack, because I still want to feel the bite if something does smack it on the way down. But when I'm throwing this, I like to throw a lighter rod than a lot of people. I throw medium lights, anywhere from 6.5 to 7 foot. And I'm using 10-pound braid. I always have a leader on there. I put the fluorocarbon on there because it's more rigid. If you have just straight braid tied up to your jigging wrap, it seems like your slack line will fall right back down into that rear hook, and you're constantly getting fouled up. Right, hooked up. So on that cast I was doing little short pops, and I'd pop it 2 or 3 times before I'd let it hit the bottom. Just trying to keep it moving, keep it erratic for these fish. It's hot out, it's summertime. The fish got big appetites and they're on the move, so the faster you move that bait, sometimes they're not gonna be too slow to catch it. It'll catch up to it. And same thing, that fish is hooked right under the face. Either he went right over top of that bait and I felt him hit the line, or he just smushed it to the bottom. But cute little 17-18 inch fish. So a quick little tip with these jigging wraps. As you can see underneath my tail, I put a bunch of epoxy underneath it. And if you fish jigging wraps for very long, or any glide baits, you know that those tails like to pop off. So I'll load it up. I'll put about 1/8 of an inch all the way to the back to keep that from popping off of there. These things are expensive. It's a bummer when you break a lure only after catching 1 or 2 fish on it. So for a leader line, I like to run fluorocarbon. Like I said, it's more rigid. You can see that it's kind of stiff. It doesn't fall back into the hook, where this braid, if you give it any slack at all, it goes limp and it'll fall right back into your hook. And I'll usually just use a snap. I'll put a swivel between the main line and the leader line just to help with the line twist. So the reason I use a medium light rod versus a medium, this is a big old chunk of lead with a hook on it. So I want a loaded rod. Oh, I just missed one. I want a loaded rod when I'm fighting a fish. If you got a medium, that rod doesn't bend as far. And anytime that walleye shakes his head, you're just gonna get a bunch of slack in your line. Or slack. It's going to straighten your rod out, and it's going to give them more of an opportunity to throw that bait. If you talk to Al Linder, he'll tell you to use mono with jigging wraps, but they fish straight under the boat. If I was just vertical jigging, I would agree with them, but casting, I definitely recommend braid. It cuts water a lot better. It sinks, so you don't get a bow in your line. You feel the bites a lot better. You get better hook sets. I fish a lot of areas that have heavy current and really deep water, so having that braid to get that good hook set is really important. And if you let it fall and hit the bottom and give that chance to them a chance to catch up to it, there's a good chance they're going to hit it. They'll eat it when they're feeding. They'll hit it when they're not feeding. It's definitely a good bait when you're looking for reaction strikes. All right, another one. That bait didn't quite get to the bottom. It popped it right on the fall. And it's a pike. Running at that one because I don't want to lose my bait. Perfect. That's a decent pike too. Right around that 30-inch mark. Skinny guy. So something else when you're fishing jigging wraps. Don't let your line go super slack on the cast. I have caught so many fish when it's just falling down at the end of a cast. Oh, I just missed another one, but it's a pure reaction. If you land on top of a fish, a lot of times they just smack it. I've actually had suspended fish catch it. One of my biggest walleyes was 31 inches, and I cast out and the bait wasn't even to the bottom, and that fish caught it on the way down. So it pays to be paying attention when that bait is falling. with this bait, I mean, I think this one weighs an ounce and an eighth. Maybe it's 7/8, I can't remember. But you can bomb these things. You can throw them several hundred feet. But I like to make 60, 70 foot casts and work them back to the boat. If I'm fishing really deep water, if I'm fishing 35, 40 foot, and I'm around nothing, you know, no snags, no weeds, I'll bomb these things, you know, a full cast. But when I'm fishing shorelines, I want to have some feel of the weeds and the bottom, kind of know what's going on. So I'm gonna try a single pop. Oh, that's funny. I thought I had a weed. Like I said, that fish hit it on the fall. I never had to pop it. I was trying to rip that bait out of the weeds and there was already a fish on it. And this is a good fish too. Oh my goodness. Best one of the day. That's embarrassing. Trying to shake off a fish. Nice little 21, 22 incher fat fish. So this is the clown. This was my favorite bait for the longest time. Favorite color. It seemed to be everybody else's favorite color because he had a hard time finding them. But so when you're letting this thing come in and you're popping it, it'll go from side to side, and hopefully you can see that on my head cam. Go back in the other direction. Alright, so we're going to go through the different kinds of glide baits. So for starters, these are your jigging wraps. These are 3.5 inches, number 9s. This is your Acme Hyper Rattle. These baits are really hard to come by. They work great. They're built really strong. They have really sharp hooks on them. And they even got a little rattle inside, if you can hear that. So this is a Johnny Darter. Now, these things are also built fairly strong. The tails will fall off on them. I put epoxy on the bottom of these as well to kind of hold the tails in place. They have a nice strong hook on them. And there's a rattle. There's actually another hookup spot on the nose. I've never used it. Seems kind of weird to me. So this is a puppet minnow. It's a little lighter than a jigging wrap. No, these don't have rattle, so I wasn't sure. So this is your shiver minnow. This is a really popular bait. This is won some of your big walleye tournaments. But these ones sink a little bit slower. I do use them in the summer quite a bit, and this one I'm popping 2 or 3 times. I don't ever just do a single pop on it. And they sink a lot slower, so those fish, you know, they catch up to it. They've got all kinds of colors. They glow in the dark. They're a good bait. So this is also a Rapala. This is called I think it's a flat wrap, something like that. But this is a really heavy bait. It's an 1 3/8 ounces. When I'm fishing super deep water, you know, I'll use this. And this is a Phantom Tilly. These things have really big tails on them. I've had issues with them breaking. They're not built the best, but they do catch fish. So let's put the chrome perch back on. That's my favorite color. So I just got tangled around the tip, so that happens a lot when you're fishing at the front of the boat, casting into the wind, and it gets really annoying reaching out to grab the end of that tip. So what I'll do is I'll drop my rod tip and I'll grab my line and then just swing it around. And it's pretty easy to figure out which side it's wrapped, because if you swing it to the right and it doesn't get loose, then you know you're going in the wrong direction. So swing it back to the left and drop it underneath your line. Well, that's why it pays to switch up your jig stroke. I tried doing the single jig. It wasn't working too well. I just went back to popping it 3 times, kind of keeping it close to the bottom, doing the shorter pops, and almost immediately hook up. And as you can see, 3 out of the 4 of my fish have been hooked in the same spot, right underneath the face. Decent little walleye. Oh, just missed one. He came back for it. Yep, if you miss one, don't get super discouraged. A lot of times, if they don't feel those hooks, they'll come back and smack it. Another 20-incher. But I gave the single jig a good 30 or 40 minutes and I never caught a fish, and I went back to double and triple pops and I've caught 3 fish almost right away. So it pays to switch up your cadence. Don't get stuck on one thing. Oh, you gotta be kidding me. Out of that time. Well, that was kind of cool. I saw that fish out suspended. I cast out to him and kind of let the bait pendulum down to him. That way he'd come down a little slower. It's a nice big walleye too. Popped it 3 or 4 times in front of him. Let it fall to the bottom. He followed it and he ate it. If I wasn't using live scope, I would have never caught that fish. There you go, about a 23, 24 incher. Sweet, that was neat. I'll have to save that shot of the fish finder. Alright, hooked up. Oh, another good thing about popping it 2, 3, 4 times like that, keeping that bait up off the bottom, is when you are fishing a little tighter to these weeds, especially when you got the stringy algae like I do in this lake, you're keeping it up off the bottom and you're not going to get snagged up as much on them. Hooked up. All right, about a 19-incher. Oh, I'm going to show you something else that you guys can do. So back when jigging wraps or first starting, I kind of wanted to keep this technique to myself. And when you're popping it like that, it was pretty obvious what you're doing. So what I started doing is reeling fast just like that, and then pausing and letting it fall to the bottom. And I was catching a lot of fish doing that. Not as many as when I was popping it, but for those of you that have bad shoulders or, you know, bad wrists like I do, that's a good option. That's probably the best fish of the day. That was almost bad. All right, about a 22, 23 incher. Not as big as I thought he was, but still a really good fish. Well, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I think I'm gonna call it a day. But remember not to get stuck with one technique or one jig stroke. Try and mix it up. Try a few different things. You can do tall strokes, short strokes, 1 pop, 2 pops, 3 pops. Fish it fast, fish it slow. You never know what they want. But thanks again for watching. Hit that like button and subscribe. Thanks.